Across the country, congregants leave their sanctuaries and head for social hour or home, and they pass by the minister. This ritual of shaking hands, it's the minister's job to greet each other by name, and the congregant's job to say something like, "Thank you for a wonderful sermon." We ministers know when the sermon is bad. We didn't have enough prep time, it was a bad topic, or for whatever reason, we're just not emotionally invested. Bad sermons put congregants in an awkward position. You're not going to say that it was a good sermon when it was really bad. So what do? Well, one colleague I know saves his best ties for his worst sermons. He gives congregants an out. They don't have to compliment the sermon. They can compliment his tie. Giving critical feedback is not all that fun, is it? It can be scary. We'd rather not stir things up. We'd rather not take a chance at hurting someone's feelings, especially here in the North Country where everybody knows everybody, and especially in this congregation where we're all supposed to get along. Receiving critical feedback may not be all that fun either. I was talking to another colleague who actually left ministry and decided to go into coaching, life coaching and health coaching. And to prepare, she had been reading a lot of books. It turns out that some secular literature is more helpful than all those theology classes we took in seminary. I asked her if she read anything that she recommended, and she said yes. The Leader Lab by Leanne Renninger and Tanya Luna. I was a little skeptical after all, because the subtitle was Core Skills to Become a Great Manager Faster. So some of the things I learned, though, in this book not only applies to managers, but to ministry, to our personal relationships, our work, and just life in general. The cool thing about this book is that they're both social scientists, and they took surveys in companies and asked who their managers were that gave the best feedback. And then they analyzed what those managers were doing, packaged it all up in easy ways to remember and apply those things. So many of the following ideas in this book comes from that chapter of the book on feedback. Now, I've realized that I've been giving basically mediocre feedback for a long time. I always thought that you should sandwich critical feedback, something good, something bad, and then something good. Well, it turns out that the message can get lost that way. And if you are concerned that the criticism may sound too harsh, you can give a validation statement, something like, I really care about this congregation and wanted to share some feedback that might improve how we minister to each other. We should make our feedback precise. Don't use blurry words, but cut to the chase and be direct. We can think of ourselves as a camera and only talk about what a lens might actually capture. And there is a method to remember this all. Think of cubic measurement that measures capacity, since giving great feedback increases capacity. The acronym is QBIQ, cubic. QBIQ, cubic. Question, behavior, impact, question, cubic. So first off, the Q, you start off with a simple question. Is now a good time to give you some feedback? In the receiving line is probably not a good time to give some. Or would you be up for hearing some of my thoughts on blank? This question prepares people so they are not on the edge. I know that in the past I've asked some of you, can we talk for a moment? And I'm sure you were like, oh no, the minister wants to talk with me. What did I do now? Did someone die? So if we prepare the person with a question, is now a good time to give you some feedback? We are less likely to hijack someone's amygdala. I screwed that up. Amygdala, thank you. We are less likely to hijack someone's amygdala. Plus, if they don't consent, plus if they consent, it will make them more receptive to the feedback. A question gives people a choice. Sometimes folks don't want it, and that's okay. Then we can save our time. Also, if it's important to you to give that feedback, you can follow up with another question. Oh, when would be a better time? Or would you be willing to tell me why you're not interested? I told you precise. Okay. So start with the question. That's the Q. Now, the next letter of cubic is the B, which is for behavior. What was the behavior that was helpful or harmful? Try to be as objective as you can and not pass judgment. Remember, it's behavior that a camera can capture. So when you started the church council meeting, you asked a great opening question. What calms you? That was a great way to start that meeting. Don't be blurry. Don't be blurry. Don't say, at our last meeting, it felt like you were not listening. Say instead, I noticed you were constantly checking your phone. Don't say, you're not giving much effort here. Instead, say, I emailed you Friday and didn't hear back until about 10 days later. Don't say, I love how creative you are. Say, the web page you created uses fresh language, good colors, and the images are eye-catching. Be more specific. What specifically did that person do or say? Good feedback points out those specific behaviors. The most nutritious type of feedback, it turns out, is bite-sized. And don't get into that triangulation trap. If someone comes up to you and says, I observed so-and-so do something, well, leave that person to give the feedback. Don't go to someone and say, I heard someone said that they observed this. You get it, all right. The next letter in the cubic feedback method is I for impact. Once you ask for feedback and gave an observation, tell them the impact it had on you, other people, or the wider community. At social hour, all dietary restrictions were honored. I felt very included. Some phrases to remember are, the reason I think it is helpful is ... or I bring it up because ... When you began the church council meeting, you started out with that great question, what calms you? That got people engaged more and set a positive tone for the entire meeting. I noticed you were constantly checking your phone. It gave me the impression that you were not interested in what I had to say. It is a good thing to think through the impact before approaching someone with the feedback, because it may be you. It may not be them. Maybe that person reminds you of your mother or something. So link up that impact with your own personal growth, or maybe something greater like the health of the congregation. The web page you created uses fresh language, good colors, and images that are eye-catching. I tell you this because this puts our congregation in the best light and will attract more people to our faith. In cubic, guess what the last Q stands for? Question again. Feedback is really a two-part conversation. We need each other and in this thing we call collective meaning making. So some good questions after you go through those. What are your thoughts? How do you see it? Does this resonate with you? And then after you ask one of those questions, and this is, I think, really important. I actually learned this when I was in sales. Pause. Ask a question and then pause. The pause signals that you care and want to listen. The last question might de-blur or de-fuzzify some of the feedback. If you say, I noticed you were constantly checking your phone, it gave me the impression that you're not interested in what I have to say, they might say, oh, I'm so sorry. I was expecting an important call from my doctor. Remember, it is fine to disagree, and it's good to find a sort of middle ground. And with this final question, you can always find ways to apply the feedback. What's going to change? What are the next steps moving forward? So I composed a little, and a lot of the examples I'm giving you are real life things that I've seen in the congregation. And this is another one, and I have permission to give this to Vice President Sarah BG. So is now a good time to give you some feedback? Okay. I noticed that you led a committee chair meeting and then asked for ideas about next year's bicentennial. This is great because it'll get more people engaged in the bicentennial. What are your thoughts? Okay, you don't have to answer. You can please play along. Okay, so now that we are a little bit more comfortable giving feedback, whether positive or negative, and using that cubic method, let's talk a little bit about receiving feedback. We may not like any feedback, but remember, good feedback is a way to grow. And it's also just not enough just to say, oh, thank you. Play back what you hear the person telling you. I heard you say, is that right? I heard you say, I seemed uninterested and disengaged when I was constantly checking my phone. Is that right? Or maybe you need another question to blur the feedback. Please give me an example of that. And then play back again what you heard. Then here's the important thing. Move forward with what they said and apply that feedback to the future. Be eager to come up with a fix. Use genuine validation statements. I'm so glad that you brought up the sound quality on Zoom to me. Music is an important part of our worship. I am going to look into that. It might be a setting and it might be easy to fix, or it might be more difficult. I may have to contact a professional. So there are 4 steps to receiving feedback. And in this book, they use a dance metaphor. So the starting position is feet together. And that's when you're standing together and you're fully aligned and you play back what you heard the person say. And then you take one step back to understand the past behavior and the feedback giver's perspective with a question and using some clarifying questions. And then with both feet back aligned again, in a shared reality, you offer up another playback of what you heard them say. And lastly, you take a step forward to explore the ideas and apply that feedback to the future. So those are some practical things I hope that we can take away. And I think we can build a culture of feedback here. And I think that's one way we can grow as a congregation. We will learn and grow faster. We'll collaborate better and do better shared ministry. We will feel more appreciated. And remember, feedback is not advice. It's a tool to improve something that maybe we're not good at, or a way to strengthen our strengths. It's also a beautiful way to build deeper relationships with each other. Notice in some of the examples I gave, many of them were positive feedback. That's because the most common feedback should be praise. Let's pause and take time to point out what we see each other doing well. If you're getting defensive during the feedback process, pause, take a deep breath, and remember to speak truth in love. Positive feedback builds confidence and gets us engaged. So let's give specific praise to reinforce what we do well. Let's invite direct feedback. The Social Justice Initiative team had a post-mortem meeting, and we honestly looked at what worked well and what didn't. We have those thank yous in the newsletter. Start submitting them. Church Council gives out thank you notes monthly. Maybe at the end of each committee meeting, there's a pause for ways to give feedback or improve each other and the committee. Or how about there's some sort of board or something in the social room where we call out folks for doing great work. Giving feedback with a plan like the cubic method, and we can receive that cubic with that 4-step dance. Because I think we all want this congregation and our lives to grow and to be healthier. Whether it is positive or negative feedback, we need to know how our actions and our words are working and coming across. Employees need it. Employers need it. Lovers need it. Managers need it. Ministers need it. Friends need it. We all need it. Together, we can speak truth in love. So may it be, and amen.